Hi, it's me again. I'm going to be making videos today, it appears. I just wanted to offer a little bit of assistance on some things that I learned from using the pattern that I provided the link to on our web page. So here is the pattern, but the directions tell you you have to add 1/4 of an inch all the way around, and for the outer part of your mask you add 1 inch on the side, and for the lining you won't need that 1 inch because your casing for your elastic is on the outside and it's folded in. So all that probably doesn't make sense if you haven't looked at the pattern. But I took these patterns and I made my own. You see, this is going to be 1/4 of an inch bigger. So once you do that, now I use this pattern. The outside, I cut this side and size, and when I cut the lining or the flannel, whatever you're using for the inside, you'll just fold it and cut. So let's cut one out. I'm going to cut the women's size out. And yeah, you probably should use pins, but okay, I don't. So I'm going to cut it out. All I have is this one side. So now I have my outside part. I'll sew it on this seam. And then I'm gonna take some flannel and I'm just gonna pull some flannel right here. I go shopping at my mom's house for fabric a lot of times. Okay? So this time for the inside, the lining, the inside that's touching the face, I'm just gonna fold this down and cut it out. Okay, so I have my outer fabric cut out, which is 1 inch bigger on the side, and my lining fabric cut out. So I'm gonna go to the sewing machine and sew these. Now I'm just gonna sew this curved edge on the lining and the outer face mask. Ooh. And I just chain piece them, but make sure you have right sides together. Ask somebody that how I remember that. It's because I did it. And I just use, there's a 1/4 inch seam. And once you've sewn it, then you have to clip the curves because you want it to, you don't want it to be bunched. So I'm just going to clip. I wanted to interrupt this video to share something very important when constructing your face masks. If you've been sewing like I have for years and years, 40+ years, you've always been taught that after you sew a seam, you press the seam allowance open. It's autopilot for us. I've been doing this. However, with a face mask, we can make them much more effective if we iron that seam allowance to one side. So I have an example here. I'm going to iron it to one side. The directions in the pattern actually say to iron to one side, but if you're like me and have been sewing for years, you are on autopilot, and this is how you normally do it. So I'm ironing my seams to one side, and then I'm just going to take it over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew a seam right next to that, and this is going to give us some added protection, and the masks will be much more effective. You guys have been doing a great job making masks out there, and I want them to be as effective as we can possibly make them. So I'm just going to sew this mask down to one side. So any mask that you make from this point on, you can add this extra layer of protection. Many of us that sew have just bypassed this altogether. So there you go. Okay, so I have my two pieces, my lining and my outer fabric, and now I want to sew them together. You can top stitch on this outer fabric. I've done that on most of them that I'm doing, but it's not necessary. So remember, right sides together. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to pin the seams, make sure that they match on the bottom and the top. And then I'm going to sew along the top and the bottom. And I'm going to sew it on the lining side because it's shorter. You'll see that 1 inch right there. So here we go. I don't use a whole lot of pins when I sew. I use my fingers. I need to cut that little string right there. There's the bottom. So I've sewn along the top and along the bottom. I just need to clip my curves so it's nice and smooth underneath there. Make sure you don't click the threads. I cut a little V. There's a lot of bulk at the top of this mask. Want it to be as comfortable as possible. So I cut a little V at the top to reduce some of that bulk and just snip. Then it should turn inside out pretty easily. So now we see a face mask. So now I've turned it right side out and I'm going to iron it down. You can use steam if you want to. You can iron on either side. I like to iron it from the back so I can go ahead and fold the 1 inch tail or casing under. Just top stitch along the top and the bottom, and you can follow along however close or far away you want. And you probably could use matching thread. See, just sew along. And now I'm going to sew along the other side. Okay, now I've top stitched the top and the bottom, and now I just need to fold in the elastic casing. Fold in 1/4 of an inch. Use a little bit of steam there. And then another 1/4 of an inch. See? Now I'm going to do the other side. 1/4 of an inch. And another 1/4 of an inch. I guess it's a little bit more than 1/4 of an inch.
Okay, and then
Stop.
And then move your iron out of the way.
There you go.
Okay. Stop.
Now we have it ironed. All we need to do to make our casing is to stitch along the edge. So here we go. I'm going to stitch along the edge, and sometimes you kind of have to push it through a little bit. I want to back stitch real good. And just sewing along the edge, giving it a good back stitch. See, just a straight line there. Now straight line on the other side. Doesn't have to be perfect, that's for sure. Just needs to be stitched down. There we go. Look at there, both sides. Stitch down, and now you're ready to just insert your elastic and your wire. So
Stop.